Alright folks, buckle up, because today, we're diving headfirst into the choppy waters of a US-China trade war. Specifically, the 5 economic hand grenades that China has tucked away, just waiting to lob over at America if things get a little too spicy. Look, I get it, trade wars. Not exactly the sexiest topic, it's all tariffs and exports, and frankly, it makes getting excited about dental work feel like a rave. But this stuff matters. Because in this globalized world, when America sneezes, everyone else catches a cold. And right now, China's got one hell of an arsenal of economic decongestant. So, if you're an American who enjoys things like, having a functioning economy, you might want to stick around for this. And while you're at it, why not hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell all your friends to do the same. Because ignorance might be bliss, but it also might mean missing out on the memo that your iPhone is about to cost $30,000. Now let's talk rare earth minerals. No, not like a signed first edition of your favorite childhood book, although those can be valuable too. We're talking about the kind of rare earths that make our modern world go round. Think smartphones, electric cars, those little headphones that somehow always manage to get tangled in your pocket. You know the ones. And guess what? China has a near monopoly on these bad boys. We're talking controlling around 80% of global production. That's like owning 80% of the world's oxygen, but instead of suffocating, we're all just constantly refreshing our Twitter feeds. But here's the kicker. America, the land of the free, and the home of the we-can-do-it-ourselves attitude, imports about 80% of its rare earths from, you guessed it, China. That's right, we're essentially handing over the keys to our tech industry and saying, hey, feel free to hold on to these for a while, wouldn't want to burden ourselves with, independence. Think of it like this. If the global economy was a game of Monopoly, China's sitting pretty on Boardwalk and Park Place, while America's stuck trying to trade Baltic and Mediterranean avenues for a chance to pass go, and maybe, just maybe, afford a tiny little house. And it gets worse. These rare earths, they're not just for fancy phones and self-driving cars. Oh no, they're also crucial for defense systems. We're talking missiles, fighter jets, the kind of stuff that makes even the most Zen Buddhist monk reconsider the whole non-violence thing. So, in a trade war, China could, if it wanted to, decide to be a real pain in the arse, shall we say, and just turn off the rare earth tap. And suddenly, America's left looking like it showed up to a technological gunfight armed with a rusty spoon. Not exactly a recipe for success, is it? Now let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, debt. Specifically, the mountain of US debt that China's been so kind to help us accumulate. See, for years, China's been buying up US Treasury bonds like they were going out of style. It's like they walked into a financial outlet mall and said, we'll take all the US debt you've got. No, seriously, we've got room in the van. And why not, right? It's a pretty sweet deal. America gets to keep borrowing money to fund its, shall we say, robust spending habits, and China gets a nice, safe investment. It's the geopolitical equivalent of lending your friend $20 to buy scratch-off lottery tickets. You know they're probably gonna blow it, but hey, maybe they'll hit it big and you'll get a cut. But here's the thing about friends with a lot of your money. They tend to have a bit of leverage. And in this case, that leverage comes in the form of trillions, with a T, of dollars in US debt. Now, if China decided to get really frisky, it could start dumping those bonds on the market. And let me tell you, that wouldn't be pretty. Think of it like trying to sell a used car that's been driven exclusively by a pack of rabid badgers. Sure, it might technically still run, but no one in their right mind is going to pay top dollar for it. The result? The value of the US dollar takes a nosedive, interest rates skyrocket, and suddenly that latte you used to buy every morning costs more than your mortgage payment. It would be economic chaos, the likes of which we haven't seen since that time I tried to pay for groceries with Monopoly money. Alright, let's move on to something a little less abstract than international finance, shall we? Let's talk tariffs. Those pesky little taxes that governments slap on imported goods, like an unwelcome guest at a dinner party who insists on showing you their entire vacation slideshow. Now China's been pretty restrained with tariffs in the past, mostly because, well, they've been making a killing selling us stuff. But don't let that fool you, they've got a whole arsenal of tariffs just waiting in the wings, ready to be unleashed like a swarm of angry bees on an unsuspecting picnic. And when it comes to American goods, China's got a lot of targets to choose from. We're talking soybeans, cars, even those little plastic toys that come in Kinder eggs. You know, the ones that are technically illegal in America, but somehow always seem to find their way into our shopping carts? Yeah, those. Now imagine China slaps a hefty tariff on American soybeans. Suddenly Chinese consumers are looking at their morning tofu scramble and thinking, you know what? I think I'll have toast instead. And just like that, American soybean farmers are left with a whole lot of soybeans and not a whole lot of buyers. The same goes for cars, electronics, you name it. China can make American products about as appealing as a week-old tuna sandwich by simply making them more expensive. And in a world where consumers are already bombarded with choices, that can be the difference between a thriving business and one that's closing up shop. Now let's talk about something a little closer to home, shall we? And by closer to home, I mean the global supply chain, that intricate web of interconnectedness that brings your morning coffee, your new sneakers, and that questionable fidget spinner you bought online, all the way from the factory floor to your grubby little hands. See, China, being the manufacturing powerhouse that it is, sits right smack dab in the middle of this global supply chain. Think of it like that one friend everyone has who knows everyone else. You know the one, they're always throwing parties, they always seem to know what's going on, and if you ever need an introduction to someone, they're your go-to person. But here's the thing about friends who are also global manufacturing hubs. They tend to have a lot of leverage, and in a trade war, China could use that leverage to throw a real wrench in the global supply chain. And trust me, no one wants to see what happens when that wrench gets thrown. Imagine, if you will, a world where suddenly, shipments of those little microchips that power everything from your smartphone to your toaster oven start getting delayed. And then those delays turn into shortages. And then those shortages turn into panic buying, price gouging, and a whole lot of people wondering why they ever took their trusty old Nokia brick phone for granted. Suddenly, that new iPhone you've been saving up for is about as attainable as a unicorn riding a rocket ship to Mars. Your car's stuck in the shop because they can't get the parts. And don't even get me started on what happens to the global economy when businesses can't get the supplies they need to operate. It's not pretty, folks. Alright, last but certainly not least, let's talk about the big kahuna, the piece de resistance, the elephant in the room, that's also a sleeping dragon that could wake up and breathe fire on your entire business model, the Chinese consumer. That's right, folks, we're talking about 1.4 billion people with wallets just itching to get their hands on the latest and greatest products, from American companies or otherwise. It's a market so vast, so hungry for consumption, that it makes Black Friday look like a quiet Tuesday afternoon at the library. Now, for years, American companies have been lining up to get a piece of that sweet, sweet Chinese consumer pie. They've been tailoring their products, their marketing campaigns, even their logos to appeal to the Chinese market. They've been bending over backwards so far they're practically doing the limbo in the name of market share. And why not? The Chinese consumer is a powerful force. They can make or break a brand with the swipe of a finger on their smartphone screen. They can turn a niche product into an overnight sensation, and they can send a company's stock price plummeting faster than you can say trade war. So imagine, if you will, China deciding to flex its consumer muscles. Imagine them saying, you know what? We're not so keen on American products anymore. In fact, we're just going to go ahead and buy local. Suddenly those American companies who've spent years cultivating their Chinese customer base are left high and dry, like a group of tourists who just realized they booked their entire Hawaiian vacation during hurricane season. Not exactly the recipe for a profitable quarter, is it? So, there you have it, 5 powerful cards China holds in a trade war with the US. From rare earth minerals to US debt, tariffs to supply chains, and of course the mighty Chinese consumer, these are just a few of the ways China could make things very, very uncomfortable for America if it wanted to. Now, I'm not saying a trade war is inevitable, I'm not saying it would be pretty, and I'm certainly not saying that anyone should be rooting for one. But what I am saying is this: we need to be aware of the potential consequences of a trade war, and we need to be prepared for the possibility that China might not be afraid to use all the tools at its disposal. So stay informed, stay engaged, and for heaven's sake, stay subscribed to this channel, because when the economic excrement hits the proverbial fan, you'll want to be sure you're getting your news from someone who can explain it all without putting you to sleep. And with that, I'm off to find a bunker stocked with rare earth magnets, US Treasury bonds, and a lifetime supply of instant noodles. See you on the other side.